Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. This is Socialing the Distance with Ryan Crouser, the 2016 Olympic champion. And I got to tell you, Ryan, I haven't got to talk to you since Doha. And the shot put competitions and championships just go from exciting to exciting, you know? And I've learned not to miss any one of your guys' throws. It's like, but I learned it by watching Christian Taylor one time. I was in Lausanne with him, and I missed his fifth jump where he went 18 meters his first time. And he came over to me afterwards. He goes, "Did you see my first 18-meter jump?" And I go, "No, I'll never miss another one of your jumps." So, it's just, because you guys' stuff changes so much. And, you and, Joe Kovacs especially, and there's a fine group of 4 or 5 really great shot putters. But this has been a strange year, but you've still had huge throws. Let's kind of start from the beginning. What did you feel like this year when you heard about Tokyo being postponed?
Yeah, so this year's been, it's definitely been a year full of challenges for a lot of people. But kind of the way that I approached it was, I came off a really, really good indoor season. Coming off of Doha was obviously a PR for me, through an indoor PR. Felt like I was in a really good place. And then with COVID and everything, kind of the wheels fell off of the outdoor season.
Okay.
Things were going well, and really, indoor world champs canceled. And so there was so much uncertainty early on where we kind of just didn't know what the plan was. And it was really easy at that point to kind of get stuck in limbo of saying, well, shoot, what I was saying, talking to my dad and my coach, Mario Satani, and John D'Agato, was like, give it 2 weeks and we'll have a better idea of where things will be at. And so then we gave it 2 weeks, and it still felt like nothing had really developed. A couple more meets had been canceled. Nothing really was looking very good. And so after that, I just sat down and I kind of said, hey, things aren't really looking good. It doesn't look like it's improving. So I'm just going to go back into off-season training. And at best, I hope we can have meets by September. And I'm going to train like we will. And best case scenario, we will have meets in September, maybe some earlier. And if not, I'll have set a great foundation going forward to start training in October for Tokyo. Or at that point, it had been postponed to 2021. So That's kind of how I approached it, instead of, because it was mentally really difficult, just with the uncertainty. As an elite athlete, you have to be goal-oriented and train each day with a focus on your daily performance, but it's always kind of looking at the trajectory and the long-term outcome. If you lose that, it's really difficult to stay motivated in the short term.
Do you train by yourself?
So I've been with Eric Solins. He's a first-year post-collegiate. He's a hammer thrower. So my throwing on the shot side is by myself, but I've been doing all my other training with him. So plyometrics, athletic training, and strength training. He's my training partner.
How do you throw every day?
I throw 4 days a week usually, and if I'm kind of in season and kind of tapered down in the weight room, a big part for me is kind of volume management. If I'm overtraining, it doesn't work well for me. So it's kind of a sliding scale. If I'm lifting a lot, I'm throwing less. So right now I'm lifting more, trying to gain some strength and gain some weight. And so I'm throwing 3 days a week. And once I get kind of to where I want my strength and body weight to be, I'll back off the weight a little bit and go spend more of my focus on throwing and go to 4 throwing sessions a week. And then in season, when I'm starting to taper down in the weight room and starting to try to throw farther, I'll go to 5 and maybe for a little bit 6 sessions a week.
Okay. What was so you had 10 of the longest throws of the year so far, and what did you attribute that to? Were you just really on?
I think the biggest thing really was the preparation I was able to do. So usually, as a professional athlete, your season goes until, well, shoot, this past year, middle of October. But normally it's kind of mid-September.
Okay.
For me, take some time off. I start up towards the end of October, first week in November, and then build a training base and start competing in January. Where this year I built a little bit of a training base, did some competing in January, February, but then was able to spend more time doing drills, more time spent in the weight room, and able to focus on really the fundamentals of what make me throw far, but things that are difficult to do in season. If I'm lifting heavy, I'm tired and slow, I can't throw far. If I'm doing a lot of drills and technique work, those changes aren't conducive to having meets in a week or two. So I was able to make a lot of technical changes and really ingrain my technique how I wanted it, and then also just spend more time becoming a better athlete, doing more med ball work, more sprinting, more lifting than what I'd normally be able to do in that kind of 8 to 10 week off-season block before I started to prep for indoor season. So that off-season block really went from pretty much late March or mid-March until I was doing in that preparation phase right up until I did those meets in Atlanta. I only had 10 days notice before the meets in Atlanta that I believe were in July.
Okay. What is the work you do not, what part of your training really helps you, but you do not like to do?
That's tough to say. I mean, at this level, you kind of like to do what makes you good.
Yeah, okay.
I would say it's the number one thing. So it's everyone that's competing at a high level, like if it's helpful to you, you almost want to do it. If there's stuff that is beneficial and you don't want to do, you might want to look into a different sport a little bit. But I would say for me, the biggest thing that I know is good for me that I struggle with doing is sprinting. Not because I don't like it. When I feel fast, and like if I can get into starting blocks and come out and run a fast 20 meters, that's really all I need. But yeah, I feel really athletic and dynamic when I do that, but the risk is high. So that's what I don't like about sprinting. It's a really high payoff and it feels good when I'm fast, but the chance of hamstring injuries when you're over 300 pounds coming out of blocks is pretty high. So that's what I would say that I like being able to sprint, but it's a little bit worrisome just because the risk of injury is high, having torn both hamstrings.
Do you spend much time stretching?
I do, and so it's kind of it's interesting. So for me, the biggest thing is staying tight where I need to be tight. So I spend a lot of time doing lifting, and so squats, Olympic lifts, and so I need my back to kind of keep a residual tension. When I spend a lot of time stretching my back, it actually leads to back problems because it gets loose and I don't have that support. So I spend a lot more time stretching the lower body, so calves, quads, hamstrings, keep flexibility in those. And same thing with the upper body. A key for me is keeping flexibility through my pecs. And so spend a fair amount of time doing stretches with that. I'm not a huge fan of static stretching. I like dynamic stretching a lot more.
Sure.
Either as a warm-up and primer or kind of afterwards just to work through soreness. I don't really sit down and do, like, say, 30 minutes of just static stretching, 30-second hold. But I do a lot of dynamic type stretching.
When you're competing, do you know when you've released that it's going to be a big throw?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, just having taken so many throws, you have a really good idea of how far it's going to go or how good it is at the moment it leaves your hand. And even before it leaves my hand, for me, the thing that I'm always working on to set up well is my entry out of the back. So if I set up my entry out of the back, make that first turn, go to face the direction I'm going to throw, and I set that up well, I know that that's going to be a pretty good throw, especially if I don't do anything in that middle part. The biggest thing is you set it up well, and you say, oh, this is going to be good. Let me try to put something else on it. And that's when things can go wrong. But if I get a good setup and am patient and just let it happen, I can tell pretty early in the throw, even before I let it go, that it's going to be at least good or bad.
Where's your favorite place to compete in North America?
I would say Eugene for sure is my favorite. There at Hayward Field. I haven't seen a new stadium, but for me, that's close to home. Grew up there. I grew up outside of Portland, but state track meets for high school were always there. I did Junior Olympic meets down in Eugene at Hayward Field, and then all through college, multiple NCAAs there, and U.S. champs where I qualified for the Olympic team that I made was in Eugene. So I have a lot of special memories there at Hayward Field.
Where's your favorite place to compete in Europe?
Europe's tough because there's a lot of really, really just cool experiences there. Zagreb is one of my all-time favorites. Anyone that has followed track and field or watched anything with a shot going the day before, they're right by the memorial fountains they have fireballs shooting up and
wow.
Usually a very good crowd. So that venue is a really cool venue. As far as being outside the stadium, Zurich Stadium for being inside is really one of a kind. It's super loud. The acoustics are unbelievable in that stadium. That's a fun one to throw at. There's a lot of, it'd be tough to choose one. And I mean, a lot of the street shots that we've done have all been very cool. Anytime that we can kind of take the shot put out of the stadium and take it to the street and bring it to people and let them see it in person. It's a big difference when you're watching from 100 yards away, these guys throw. And the thing is, everyone out there is 300 pounds plus. You look from 100 yards away, you say, oh, those guys are just kind of stout guys throwing a shot around, when you're actually 10, 15 feet away from the circle, seeing that I'm 6'7", 310, and I'm about in the middle body weight wise. So you bring the shot put to the people and let them see. Those are usually tend to be my favorite events.
What is when you're competing? Like I'm thinking back to Rio and Enginal. I was at the top of the stadium every night, right? And I've got my binoculars and I'm checking your stuff. Watching you guys throw. And do you know that the crowd's around you when you're in a competition like that? Are you so focused on your throwing?
Yeah, it's pretty focused. I mean, in between you might notice it a little bit, but it's more for the other people than for myself. So when I'm getting ready, I don't really notice, and especially when I'm throwing, I'm not really focused on the crowd too much at all, or their reaction. I'm more notice the crowd based on what they're doing for other throwers than anything else, but not so much for myself at all.
You had two wonderful competitions in Des Moines near the end of your season. What was it about Des Moines this year that made it so special? Or was it confluence of your really strong fitness and your desire to compete? What was going on?
Yeah, I was. So I came off the Atlanta meet, the second one, and through the 2291.
Yeah.
And that surprised me a little bit, just because I hadn't had the preparation, really what I thought, to throw really far. I hadn't done any speed work, very little sprinting or med ball. And for me, that's kind of my bread and butter, that transition, the weight room work into kind of power and energy that I can use for the throw. And so I was big and strong, and so I was really excited for that 2-month prep between Atlanta and Des Moines to transition to where I really wanted to be. And so I, just from day one getting back from Atlanta, it was like, okay, I built a really good foundation here in the last 4 months, 5 months. Now let's kind of see what we can do with it. And so I went into Des Moines having done the preparation that I had been hoping to do before Atlanta, but just didn't know that because I knew about Atlanta 10 days before. So did all the preparation that I wanted and just was really confident going in. Training was going really well and felt really good physically. I felt fast and I felt athletic. And for me, that's a pretty good indicator that I can throw far. So I was just really, felt really prepared going in. And actually, honestly, was hoping to throw a little bit farther on the top end. I definitely can't complain with the series, especially on the second day. Anytime you're consistent like that, you know that there's a big throw potential there. And so, and I knew that I could have thrown farther, but the consistency was definitely there. So I was really happy with that performance and the consistency that I had throughout. So that was a good indicator for me that a really big throw was there. And I felt throughout most of the season from Des Moines onward that I was in really good shape to throw a really far throw. It didn't quite come together to get that 23 meters, but I felt like it was possible. It just didn't happen on any day of type scenarios.
When you're competing and you've got all the best guys out there, are you talking to them between throws, or are you guys kind of to yourselves?
It depends mostly on who the throwers are and which throwers. Tom Walsh is usually pretty quiet. Darlin Romani is a super nice guy, but just doesn't speak a lot of English, so he kind of keeps to himself. I'll talk to Doyle some. I'll talk to Joe a little bit as well. It depends person to person and individual to individual, just how talkative each person might be.
If you were talking to general American sports fans, okay, and you want to get them interested in the shot put, what would you tell them about the shot put?
So I would say the best comparison I can say is if you don't know anything about the shot put, imagine you go to a bowling alley and pick up the heaviest bowling ball. And so 16 pounds, that's the heaviest bowling ball that they'll have at the bowling alley. And then you go to a basketball court and stand at the free throw line. You're going to throw from the free throw line and make a 3/4 court shot with that heaviest bowling ball at the bowling alley.
Wow.
That's the best indicator. So I think that's 75 feet with a 16-pound ball. And so you're going to, make a 3/4 court basketball shot with a 16-pound ball.
That's a great picture. Thank you. We will make a clip of that. Good job, Ryan. Talk to me. If you weren't doing the shot put, what other field event would you do?
The easiest one for me would be discus. I threw discus in high school, and I have the high school national record for the U.S., 237.7. And so that would be the easiest transition, would be to throw the discus. I think I could also possibly, if I had lost a lot of weight and spent the time on it, could throw javelin. When I was growing up, the javelin was my best event. When I was younger, I was tall and skinny, and javelin was my best event. So I think I could go back to that. It would take some time, and javelin's kind of a difficult battle, just staying healthy. And so if I could manage to do that, I think I could be a pretty successful javelin thrower. Don't know much about the hammer at all. Haven't done it too much. I've done some coaching in the hammer, but as far as throwing it, I can't say how I would do in that. And then if I wasn't in the throws, if I went back, I would probably be a triple jumper. It was funny. I was talking to Christian Taylor, and we jumped almost the exact same distance our freshman year of high school in the triple jump.
Wow,
so,
cool.
Yeah, so that's a little fun fact. I was state and regional champion in the triple jump my freshman year for the Junior Olympics, and so I was doing shot put, discus, javelin, and triple jump for my 4 events.
Wow.
my freshman year of high school.
Wow. Do you think the shot gets the respect it deserves in track and field?
I think it's definitely getting more, and I mean it's difficult to say. Of the throws, I feel like the shot gets gets the most attention. And I think the shot's kind of at a turning point a little bit where you're seeing track and field promoters and venues are starting to see the value of the shot in bringing it and having it as a pre-comp event, whether it's a street shot, bringing it outside, putting it in city centers. The most recent one was in Belgrade. They put it right there in the city center in Belgrade. So you have the drawing power of almost a full track meet with a single event. And I feel like that's where people are trying to realize the value of the shot, and it's become getting more interest and more popular. And that in combination with the level that shot putting is at right now, it's one of the hottest events in track and field in terms of performances in top end and in the depth. If you look at top 3, it's the best it's ever been, and you go and look at top 12, top 20, it's the best it's ever been. So I think the combination of those two things is kind of, shot is definitely, I would say, trending upwards right now.
Who is the shot putter right now that has been surprising you the most?
It'd be tough to say. I would say maybe Romani. If you look at most improved and just the biggest 4-year swing would be Romani. He was a surprise in Rio through PRs there, and there for the home crowd, and he brought a ton of energy to that meet, and kind of came out of nowhere just to make the final, and ended up being in the upper half of the final. And at that point, it was like, wow, this guy really came out of nowhere and threw close to 21 meters. And then not even 4 years later, having thrown over 2260, he's been definitely kind of the up-and-comer, the most surprising one, and continued. He's I believe will continue to be competitive. He's just a really big, strong, powerful guy, and I think he has a lot of upside. And so I'd put him as the #1 biggest surprise if I was looking at the field in 2016 and said, out of these guys, which one's pick who's going to throw 2260. Nothing against him, but I would not have picked him, seeing him throw before in 2016.
Okay. John Powell is a good friend of mine, the discus thrower. And I used to watch John play mind games with guys back in the 70s and 80s at meets. So, I'd be warming up for the 2 mile, and I'd be watching John. And I remember one time Mike Bunsick had the biggest throw in the world. John went up to him and rubbed his shoulders and said, "You look a little tight today." Yeah, John and Mike just fell apart. And I go up to Paul afterwards. I said, "What's this about?" And he goes, "Oh man, it's so fun to play mind games with people." Do shot putters play mind games with each other?
A little bit, not too much. You'll see it in warm-ups. I think it just depends on the athlete. Some people, it kind of bothers them a little bit, and some people it almost goes the wrong way.
Okay.
You'll see it in warm-ups with people trying to throw far in warm-ups, or talking shit in warm-ups about how good either their warm-up is or how bad somebody else looks a little bit. But so you'll see a lot more in warm-ups than anything else. And so like seeing probably the most entertaining is looking at some of the guys that have big stand throws. So like David Sorrell and myself, if you can come in and say a lot of the spinners don't really train stand throws too much. So they might take their first spin, their second spin real easy. And then if you can come in and throw a stand throw farther than what their first spin was, that's usually a reason to at least let them know that, hey, if you're David Sorrell just threw a stand throw farther than you can spin. And it's kind of entertaining to mess around with some people and do that.
All right, I'm going to give you 5 throwers' names. You got 3 words to describe them. Okay. Tom Walsh. Tom Walsh first.
So I would say competitor, dynamic, that just in terms of his throw, and I can't even come up with a third one for Tom Walsh. fast. I guess
Okay.
he's the fastest thrower in the world in terms of his speed that he comes out of the bag.
David Storrell.
Sorrell, he'd be consistent. Glider would probably be the number one. He's really the last glider, and dedicated. He's a really hard worker, really dedicated, and he's done a lot for the sport just in his long career. Multiple-time European champion, multiple-time world champion. So a lot of respect for David Sorrell. Continue to work hard as the last glider, where you're kind of seeing the spin start to take over.
Joe Kovacs.
Strong, powerful, and loud. Nobody yells louder than Joe. He's probably arguably one of the strongest, if not the strongest throwers. Anyone who has seen the video of him squatting 705 for 10, that's like a free full depth squat, which is, there's not very many people in the world that can do that. So yeah, that'd be my description for Joe.
Okay, and what about Christian Cantwell? Did you know him at all?
Cantwell? Yeah, so I know Cantwell. He lives just a couple hours north of me. Number one would be bench press. He's one of the strongest bench pressers ever. And yeah, so he'd be a talker as well. He likes to likes to talk. And shoot, for his third, I'd say his skinny legs.
I just remember it was Hengelo's got to be 2012, and they would do a shot put in the center of the town, right? And that night, there was like 12 shot putters there. I mean, everybody at the time. And they had their own indoor Olympics that night. A lot of beer was involved, but there was lawn darts indoors, pool. It was crazy, but it was just, and I got to watch. It was just fun. But what it got me to appreciate was that, one, how competitive the guys are, but how they still enjoy each other's, company. And I really like that, It's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, that's the thing with a lot of the shot putters. You're traveling. I mean, kind of got the top 8, 10 guys. They're doing most all your meets together. So you're traveling on a normal year to 10, 15, maybe close to 20 meets if you go late into the season, and you're seeing each other at all of them, and you're on the road at all of them. And a lot of people don't realize, like, as a professional track athlete, you just have a lot of downtime when you're in Europe.
Yeah.
You travel over there, but it's not all just sightseeing and vacation when you're there, because you kind of got to stay off your feet, got to make sure you're prepared physically, and so that kind of leads to just a lot of downtime or hanging out around the hotel. And you're seeing these same guys, you develop pretty good friendships with them, and you get to know them really well just because it's kind of the crew that you're traveling around the world with. So it's a fun dynamic that you have these guys that for 3 or 4 months out of the year, you're almost living together in the sense of traveling and competing all over the world. And so that's one thing you kind of look forward to about the European season, is going over and seeing those guys. And then you're back home September through March or April, even May, and you don't see them, and then you're back on the road with them again.
What do you like about the indoor season?
So I like the indoor for a couple of reasons. Number one is the conditions are always good. I've been lucky the last few years with my outdoor season of not having too terrible of conditions. Been a couple rough meets, but I like the indoor. You can just count on having good conditions. I do like throwing the indoor shot. I like that the diameter of the shot can be bigger. I feel like it fits my hand better, and so I'm a fan of throwing the larger indoor shot. And the third and final one is that the rings tend to be faster, and so for me, I feel like it just lets me turn easier. And so I do a lot of training on indoor rings this last year, and all during COVID, I was on really what would be an indoor ring. It's a wood ring. I was throwing outside, but I made a portable wood ring, and so I like throwing on that. It's fast and it's very unforgiving, but so if you're off balance, you're going to know it, and you're going to be slipping all over the place. But it makes you be better technically, and if you do line it up well, you can turn so easily, you can apply more force to the ball.
How do you think 220, the year 220 is going to be known as the year of the pandemic, but right now 221 looks to be a challenge too. Do you believe we're going to see the Olympics next year?
I sure hope that we do. I think that this summer, it's been a challenging year, but I think this summer was good in that it led us being able to show up some athletes, getting over to Europe and competing. We laid a foundation for how we can go forward and compete in a safe way, which I think was really good. So we kind of got to see that, hey, we can still do sport, we can still do track and field, it can be safe, we can have a limited number of spectators. So all good groundwork for what we'll need going into Tokyo. So I don't think that we'll probably see Tokyo 2021 as what it could have been without the pandemic. I know Tokyo was so prepared, and I was just for what they wanted to showcase Japan to the world. And so we might not see these grand displays of opening ceremonies with packed stadiums and tens of thousands, almost hundreds of thousands of people of international travel. That might not happen, but I still believe we'll have athletic performance at Tokyo. It might be limited spectators with protocols in place to keep athletes and officials safe. But I think that we still have a good foundation to see how to compete in a safe way. So I'm really hoping that we can still have the Olympics, and the value of the Olympics, so much of it is in the broadcasting to the world. It's expensive to go and travel to the Olympics. The prices are unbelievably high, but so many people partake in the Olympics from their own home. And I think that with the challenges that we've had in 2020 and going forward, that 2021 Olympics is a great opportunity to show all the world that, hey, we can still come together and celebrate sport. And that's one of the, having been to the Olympics, that's one of the greatest things about the Olympics is the unity across all countries. And so I feel like in such a divided time for not only America, but a lot of the world, that it would be great to have the Olympics in some form that we can safely broadcast to people in their homes that, hey, we're still all humans, we're all in this together, and we're going to pull through. And we can, just because we're going through this adversity right now, doesn't mean that this is the end. We're still going to come out the other side, and we'll be stronger and more united than we ever were.
Did you, you mentioned a little while back that David Sorrell is one of the last of the gliders. Can a glider throw as far as a spinner?
That's a tough question. So I think the spin generates more power.
Okay.
That's kind of without a doubt, just from a sports science perspective, the spin generates more power. However, some people, to get technical with it, some people perform better linearly than they do rotationally. So it goes to a little bit in terms of spatial mapping and how your brain perceives movement. Some people are naturally much more inclined to rotate. They're comfortable rotating, and that's just how their brain processes well. Some people are just very linear focused, and some of it is just natural genetics. You are a sprint athlete, or you're more of a reactive rotational athlete, and some of it's learned, but I believe a lot of it's learned at a younger age. So if you have a kid that grew up spinning, he'll be a lot more comfortable than a kid that grew up gliding and you try to spin when you're 22 years old. So I think the spin has its upside, but if you had the biggest, best athlete in the world and their spatial awareness was more patterned linearly, I would say that for them, because you have an unbelievable athlete, you're going to want to see how far they can throw, and the glide is better for them. And so you watch David do the glide, and he has a beautiful glide with great technique. It fits him perfectly, and I've seen David try to spin, and he is not a spinner by any means. He just doesn't have the proprioception after having thrown with a glide for so long. He's just not his brain is not wired to throw with the spin. So David's a prime example of someone who the glide is still is better for. So I don't think that it's 100% guaranteed that the spin is better than the glide. I see kids spin that it's still on a case by case basis. So many people are so quick to just the spin has its advantages, but the glide also has its advantages as well. And also, I'll just throw in there that the glide tends to do better at major championships. So if you train and peak your training and taper down the right way, it gets difficult with the spin to throw well when you feel really good and are really nervous and have a lot of energy. And that is where the glide really shines. You might throw a little bit less throughout the year, but you can guarantee that a glider will throw a season's best at a major championship. It's a lot more difficult to do that with the spin.
Okay. We're down to our last 4 minutes. Do you have any words of inspiration that you think about before you compete? Is there a great quote that you think about, or is there, when you're preparing yourself for a big event, is there something you consider?
A little bit. For me, it's more in the preparation beforehand, not so much the day of or hours before. At that point, I mean, my dad always said the hay's in the barn. You've done all the work beforehand. So for me, it's more, I have two things written on my bathroom mirror that I look at every single day. On one side, it says, enjoy the process. And so for me and a lot of athletes, I think you get so goal oriented that you spend so much time looking long term that you kind of forget to enjoy what you're doing right now. And that, at the end of the day, I just know for me, having won the Olympics and everything, you put so much stock on it of, oh, if I win the Olympics, everything's going to change. The most interesting thing, you wake up the next day and you're still the same person. It's not like the world is still the same place. Even if you get the goal that you've been working 10, 15 years to achieve, that really is where all the value is. And then on the other side of my mirror is be present in the moment. And it's kind of along the same line. We're so goal-oriented, focusing either on the future or the past, looking back or working towards a goal, that very rarely are we actually present in the moment and focus on what we're doing right now. So for me, it might be just getting ready for a particular throw in training, and it might be throw number 22 of the 30 that I'm taking that day, and I'll find myself thinking, okay, I want to be done with this, or I'm thinking, oh, 4 throws ago I really messed that up. And just taking a second to be saying, okay, this is throw 22. I'm going to be focused on this throw in particular and be present in the moment for this. And you just keep reminding yourself of that throughout the day, day after day, and the quality of work that you're able to put in, being present and focusing on what you're doing, really can be the difference between world championship medal or not even making the final. Is just the quality and focus on the present.
Yeah, and we were just having a little problem with the Wi-Fi, but we got it. Ryan, thank you. You still there? Can you hear me? Thank you. You survived 40 minutes with me, and I hope it wasn't that painful. Right. But thank you again. I look forward to seeing you competing next year. Stay safe, and we'll have this up next week. I'll send you a link, and then we're going to break up clips too, and you'll have those as well.
All right.
But thanks again, man. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. We're socialing the distance. We've been Ryan Crouser, the Olympic champion. He's, so Christian Taylor, when we did his interview, he was driving across Austria. And so I keep records now of how well the Wi-Fi works. But thank you again. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.
All right. Have a good one. Stay safe.
Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. This is Socialing the Distance, your favorite program. And this week we featured, and this is the epilogue, we featured Ryan Crouser, the 2016 Olympic champion, and the man who has 10 of the 14 longest throws in 2020. Ryan's training down in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and good guy, great sense of humor. You remember when we had Christian Taylor, he was driving across Austria? Well, Ryan was driving across Arkansas, I think. And for the first 20 minutes of the event, he was tooling around, and then he sat down somewhere. Great guy, good sense of humor, loves his event, and really loves the sport. And a lot of fun to talk to. We talked about, we talked about everything. Talked about dealing with the pandemic, which has been a challenge for him. And he admits that there was a couple of weeks there where he's kind of going, why am I doing this? What is going on? This guy likes to be motivated. He likes to compete. He knows about his event, too. He knows what works for him. And what's been good for him about 2020 is all the intrinsical things that are around, the tertiary things that are around the shot, he has been able to work on. And that's what's helping him this year. He was surprised with his 22.91 down in lovely Atlanta in end of July. And then he trained almost 2 months. And then he had the 2 competitions in Des Moines where he had, I think, what was it? 10 or 11 of the throws were over 22 meters. It was huge stuff. And then we talked about his competitors. We talked about being in an Olympic event. We talked about dealing with the pandemic and how he's hoping that Tokyo will happen this next year. But he also had some really good things to say about how the Olympics bring us together. And in this time when Americans seem to be very divided, and while I think we are in some levels, there's so many things that still bring us together. But one of the things it does is every 4 years is the Olympics. People really love that. And I thought that Ryan was quite eloquent about the value of the Olympics, so I hope you guys watch that. Ryan Crouser is one of the reasons why I love the sport. He is a fine athlete. He's a thoughtful human being. He gets along with his competitors and he competes with his competitors. And he enjoys what he does, which is kind of cool to see too, in this day and age. And it's one of the reasons why we do Socialing the Distance and one of the reasons why we do RunBlogRun. So I hope you enjoy the video and the programming that we're doing. If you like us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, okay? Tell your friends too. If you love us, subscribe on YouTube. And again, stay safe. If you're going to be indoors, wear a mask. If you're outdoors, carry the mask with you. If you can't be more than 6 feet separated, then put the mask on. Stay safe. And think about other human beings. Don't think about them as Democrats or Republicans. Think about them as human beings. I think we've taken this politics stuff way too seriously. And politicians worked well together. Just remember, Harry Truman used to play cards with the head of the Republican Party, or the leaders of the Republican parties back in the 40s. He also did a 2-mile walk and had a stiff shot of the Reverend Jack afterwards. But, hey, got to respect that. Anyway, I've digressed a bit, but you know that. Thank you again for watching our Socialing the Distance. Thanks to Mike Deering for producing Socialing the Distance. Mike's with the Shoe Addicts, the agency that really helps get our stuff going in a lot of ways and creates a lot of our video work. And thank you to Ryan Crouser for taking the time today. Thanks to his agent and manager, Paul Doyle, for putting this together. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun, signing off.